What if everything you thought you knew about Hollywood beef was just the trailer, and the real movie just leaked? Because overnight, the internet woke up to one question it cannot stop asking. Did 50 Cent just press the nuclear button on Marlon Wayans? No press conference, no courtroom, just Instagram, chaos, and a whole lot of allegedly. Clips are circulating, narratives are spiraling, lawyers are suddenly being mentioned, and somehow, once again, Diddy's name is hovering in the background like a deleted scene nobody asked for. Is this exposure? Is this trolling at an elite level? Or is this just another case of 50 Cent doing what he does best, letting the internet destroy itself while he watches? Because 1 minute, this was about a documentary. The next minute, it's memes, rumors, and whispers of leaked footage that may or may not exist. And now Marlon Wayans is allegedly considering legal action, while the comment sections are acting like a jury that never sleeps. So buckle up, because whether this is strategy, satire, or social media warfare gone too far, somebody's reputation is on the line, and the internet is loving every second of it. What started as a simple opinion has now exploded into one of the messiest celebrity standoffs the internet has seen this year. And no matter how you look at it, one name keeps pulling the strings from the shadows. This whole situation didn't begin with leaked footage or legal threats. It began with words, a few comments, a reaction to a documentary, and that reaction was all it took for 50 Cent to flip the switch. Marlon Wayans never set out to become this video of this story. He wasn't announcing a project. He wasn't calling anyone out directly. He was asked about 50 Cent's Diddy-focused documentary, and instead of dodging the question, he gave an honest opinion. He said he hadn't watched it. He suggested it felt one-sided. He questioned the idea of kicking someone while they're already down. In most situations, that would have been the end of it. But this wasn't most situations. This was 50 Cent. Anyone who has followed 50 for more than 5 minutes knows one thing very clearly. He does not let comments slide, especially not when they come from someone with a recognizable name, a clean public image, and a respected career. To 50, that's not commentary, that's an invitation. And instead of responding with a statement, an interview, or even a direct accusation, 50 did what he always does. He turned it into entertainment. He posted, he joked, he implied, he let the internet do the heavy lifting. Suddenly, old clips of Marlon talking about attending Diddy parties started circulating again. Not because they were new, not because they revealed a crime, but because in the current climate, context doesn't matter. Timing does. Those clips weren't proof of anything. They were fragments, sound bites, moments pulled from a different era and dropped into a very different narrative. And once they were reposted, the story stopped being about a documentary and became something else entirely. It became about suspicion, about optics, about what people think they're seeing versus what's actually there. 50 never said Marlon did anything illegal. That's the key detail people keep missing. He didn't accuse. He didn't confirm. He simply reposted, captioned, and stepped back. And when you understand how internet culture works, you realize that's often far more powerful than a direct allegation. As the post gained traction, the tone online shifted fast. Comment sections went from discussing film bias to dissecting party culture, celebrity circles, and who knew what and when. People weren't asking for facts anymore. They were asking questions loaded with assumptions. And once those assumptions take hold, the narrative writes itself. That's when the phrase everyone's now repeating started popping up. Leaked clips, freak parties, hidden footage, none of it verified, none of it proven, but all of it repeated so often that it began to feel real to the audience watching from the outside. This is how reputations get shaken without a single document ever being filed. Marlon, watching this unfold, did what most people would do when their name starts trending for the wrong reasons. He spoke up, he clarified, he said he wasn't defending anyone. He explained that he had attended industry parties like countless other celebrities, but that he left early. A reasonable explanation, a normal explanation. But normal doesn't survive long once the internet smells blood, because in the public imagination, Explanations don't erase implications, they amplify them. The more Marlon explained, the more people dissected every word. Why did he leave early? What did he see? What didn't he see? Why say anything at all? Suddenly, silence would have been suspicious, but speaking made him look defensive. It was a no-win situation. Meanwhile, 50 stayed exactly where he likes to be, calm, detached, posting just enough to keep the fire burning, but never enough to be held responsible for the blaze. This is where his reputation as a master provocateur comes into play. He doesn't need receipts, he needs reactions, and he was getting them behind the scenes, according to whispers and unnamed insiders. Marlon's camp wasn't laughing. Talk of legal options began to surface, not because of confirmed leaks, but because of reputational damage. In the entertainment world, perception can cost more than lawsuits, and when rumors start sounding like facts to advertisers, studios, and collaborators, that's when things get serious. Still, nothing concrete had dropped, no actual footage, no verified leaks, just a growing sense that something might exist, somewhere, somehow, and that uncertainty was doing all the work. Fans argued, critics speculated, and the media kept recycling the same question in different fonts. Is 50 bluffing? Is this trolling? Or is this the calm before something much bigger? And as Marlon's name stayed locked in trending columns alongside words he never expected to see next to it, one thing became painfully clear. This was no longer about who was right or wrong. It was about control. Control of the story. Control of the audience. Control of what happens next. Because when someone like 50 Cent starts hinting instead of speaking, it usually means he's already several moves ahead. And while Marlon was trying to put out a fire, he never started. The internet was busy asking the one question that refuses to go away. What happens if 50 decides to stop hinting and actually show something? And that's exactly where the situation stands as the tension keeps building and the silence starts to feel louder than any post ever could. Because if there really is nothing there, then this ends quietly. But if there is even a shred of material waiting to be revealed, then what comes next could completely change how this entire situation is seen. And that's where the story moves next, as we look at how the online reaction spiraled even further once rumors turned into expectations and expectations turned into demands from an audience that now believes they're watching the opening act of something far bigger than a simple celebrity disagreement. And what followed only poured more fuel on a fire that was already burning out of control. Because once the audience starts demanding answers, the story stops belonging to the people involved and starts belonging to the crowd. And that's exactly when things spiraled into the phase where speculation became entertainment and entertainment started masquerading as investigation. Almost overnight, social media transformed into what looked like a digital crime lab. Except nobody had evidence and everybody had a theory. Anonymous accounts claiming industry knowledge began popping up everywhere. Threads started with phrases like "I wasn't going to say anything, but," which is usually the internet's way of saying absolutely nothing reliable is about to follow. Screenshots with no sources circulated. Insiders suddenly existed in every comment section. And somehow, all roads kept leading back to the same vague claim that 50 Cent wasn't joking, that something was sitting in a vault, and that Marlon knew it. Again, no proof surfaced, but that didn't slow anything down. In fact, the lack of proof made it worse, because when there's no concrete information, imagination fills the gap, and imagination on social media is always more extreme than reality. People began stitching together old interviews, red carpet clips, comedy sketches, and casual comments Marlon had made over the years, analyzing them like encrypted messages. A laugh here meant something, a pause there meant something else. Every frame became a clue in a mystery nobody could confirm actually existed. Meanwhile, content creators jumped in fast. Reaction videos, breakdown videos, body language experts suddenly appeared out of nowhere, explaining how Marlon's posture in one interview proved nervousness. Others claimed 50's silence between posts was strategic, that he was letting legal clearances run or waiting for the right moment. None of it verifiable. All of it convincing enough for an audience that already wanted drama. Then came the spending stories, alleged party budgets, imaginary guest lists, claims of private floors, locked rooms, and NDAs handed out like drink tickets. According to unnamed sources, these events were described as exclusive, excessive, and designed to blur boundaries. According to those same unnamed sources, everyone knew, but no one talked. It was the kind of storytelling that feels detailed enough to be believable while remaining just vague enough to avoid accountability. Marlon's alleged consideration of legal action didn't slow the narrative either. If anything, it intensified it. To some, it looked like a reasonable attempt to protect his name. To others, it looked like fear. And in internet culture, fear is interpreted as guilt far more often than innocence. So by this point, the story wasn't about whether anything actually happened at any party. It was about whether Marlon could regain control of a narrative that had already escaped him, and whether 50 would keep playing the long game or decide to escalate for maximum impact. Because the longer this dragged on, the more pressure built. And with that pressure came the sense that something had to give, that either the rumors would collapse under their own weight or the situation would explode into a completely new phase. And that looming uncertainty is exactly where things stood as reactions grew louder. Theories grew wilder, and the fallout began reaching far beyond memes and comment sections into real-world consequences that could reshape careers, reputations, and alliances moving forward. And once a situation reaches that point, where rumors start influencing real decisions, that's when the fallout becomes impossible to ignore. Because what was once internet noise begins to echo in places that actually mattered. At this stage, the conversation quietly shifted from speculation to consequences, not public consequences that play out in comment sections, but private ones that happen behind closed doors. According to chatter from entertainment circles, meetings were postponed, calls went unanswered, and schedules suddenly became flexible, not because anyone had proof of wrongdoing, but because uncertainty is bad for business. No studio wants to be the one explaining why they ignored warning signs that were trending for weeks. Even if those warning signs were built on nothing more than implication, that's the hidden damage of narrative warfare. You don't need evidence to cause hesitation, you just need doubt. And doubt was everywhere. Meanwhile, 50 continued doing what he does best, which is almost nothing. A post here, a caption there, sometimes not even that. And that silence became its own message. To supporters, it looked like confidence. To critics, it looked calculated. To everyone watching, it felt intentional. People began interpreting pauses as preparation. Every gap between posts was treated like the calm before a storm. Marlon, on the other hand, faced a completely different challenge. How do you disprove something that was never proven in the first place? You can't refute a rumor that doesn't have a clear claim. You can't correct a narrative that keeps changing shape. One day it's about party attendance. The next it's about old interviews. The next it's about imagined footage. It's like trying to grab smoke. Legal action, even the suggestion of it, became a double-edged sword. On one hand, it signals boundaries. It tells people there's a line. On the other hand, it feeds the perception that there's something to protect. And once that perception exists, the internet treats it like confirmation. No matter how many times reality says otherwise, what makes this entire situation uniquely volatile is the characters involved. This isn't a quiet dispute between private individuals. This is a clash between someone known for provocation and someone known for staying above controversy. That contrast alone fuels the fire. One thrives in chaos, the other looks trapped by it, and audiences always side with whoever looks like they're in control. At the same time, there's an uncomfortable truth nobody wants to say out loud. Even if nothing ever comes out, even if no footage exists, even if this all fades away quietly, the stain doesn't fully disappear. Internet memory is long, search results linger, clips resurface, jokes get recycled. Years from now, someone will still bring it up, not because it was proven, but because it was memorable. And that's the real power of what's happening here. This isn't about exposing truth. It's about shaping perception, about deciding what people associate with a name when they hear it. In that sense, the damage doesn't require a reveal. It's already done its work. As days passed without a dramatic drop, impatience grew. Some fans accused 50 of bluffing. Others argued that restraint was proof of strategy. Some turned on Marlon entirely, saying he should have stayed silent from the start. Others defended him, pointing out that no one deserves to be dragged into a storm built on assumptions. The divide hardened, nuance disappeared, and through all of it, one question kept circling back, louder than ever: what happens next? Because stories like this rarely just stop. They either collapse or escalate. Either the audience gets bored and moves on, or someone decides to change the pace. If 50 truly has nothing, then this becomes another example of how suggestion alone can derail a moment. If he does have something, even something harmless, the way it's framed could still be damaging. And if nothing ever surfaces, the silence itself will be interpreted 100 different ways, none of them fully fair. For Marlon, the path forward is narrow. Stay quiet and let the internet burn itself out. Or keep speaking and risk feeding the narrative further. Neither option guarantees relief. For 50, the choice is simpler: continue to hint and maintain control, or walk away having already achieved the disruption he wanted. And for everyone watching, this entire saga becomes a case study in modern celebrity conflict, where facts matter less than framing, where implication travels faster than truth, and where a single comment can spiral into weeks of speculation with real-world consequences. Because in the end, this was never really about parties, or clips, or documentaries. It was about power, about who gets to decide the story and who gets trapped inside it. And as long as that balance remains unresolved, the tension doesn't disappear, it just waits. So, whether this fades into the background as another internet moment or explodes into something far more serious depends entirely on how that move comes next. Because in a culture that feeds on anticipation, the silence is never empty, it's loaded, and everyone knows that once it finally breaks, the narrative will shift again, for better or worse. And the only certainty left is that this story has already proven how quickly perception can turn into punishment long before truth ever gets a chance to catch up. So now the question ain't what you were told, or what you think you saw. It's what you actually believe after watching how fast this situation spiraled out of control. Was this a calculated move designed to dominate the narrative, or did things simply snowball the way they always do when the internet smells controversy? Did Marlon Wayans get caught in a storm he never meant to enter? Or did speaking up invite consequences he underestimated? And most importantly, is silence in today's culture a shield? Or is it just another form of fuel? Because if there's one thing this entire saga proves, it's that in the age of social media, perception can be more damaging than proof, and implication can travel farther than facts. No court ruling, no leaked footage, no official statement has to exist for a reputation to feel the heat. All it takes is timing, framing, and an audience ready to connect dots that may not even be there. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think this was all strategic pressure, or do you believe there's more waiting behind the scenes? Did 50 play this perfectly, or did it cross a line? And did Marlon handle this the right way, or should he have stayed completely silent from the start? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation is far from over. If you want more deep dives into the stories everyone's whispering about but nobody's breaking down properly, make sure you like, subscribe, and stay locked in, because the next narrative is already forming, and you don't want to miss when it shifts.